for everyone joining us again across Europe. I'm Taru Sandén, and along with Ana Pires da Silva, I'm pleased to moderate this fifth conversation on agroecology. I represent the Austrian Agency for Health and Food Safety, 𝐀𝐠𝐫𝐢𝐜. My colleague from 𝐀𝐠𝐫𝐢𝐜, 𝐀𝐫𝐚𝐧𝐬𝐼𝐜 will be handling the technical aspects today and is available to assist you with any technical issues that you may have during today. As a reminder, I would like to ask you to switch off your camera and keep your microphone off to ensure a good connection. And today we will be going for the fifth conversation on agroecology, focusing on agroecological transition. The partnership Agroecology is a European partnership on accelerating farming systems transition, agroecology living labs, and research infrastructures. It is a collaborative research and innovation initiative involving the European Commission and 26 member states, associated countries, and third countries, with a total of 72 partners at the moment. These conversations on agroecology are among the steps to enhance agricultural knowledge and innovation system, the AKIS, for the agroecological transition. These conversations aims to foster connections between living labs and research infrastructures and all the actors that are within them, all across Europe. So we hope to give insights to South, North, West, East, and Central Europe throughout these conversations. These are monthly conversations and will continue through the 7-year partnership. And we hope to promote engagement and networking between actors. So please have a look who is there today if you find interesting colleagues that you want to communicate with during the conversation or also after. Today we have two speakers with us, Kristín Vala Ragnarsdóttir from Iceland and Dóra Drexler from Hungary. And they will introduce you to the topic of agroecological transition. How is this in theory? How can this be lived in practice? First, we will listen to both of the individual talks. And after that, you will have an opportunity to join in for the discussion. Please note also that this conversation will be recorded. If there are any objections, please let us know now. No objections. Great. Then without further ado, I would like to start with today's conversation, and I would like to give the floor to Kristín Vala Ragnarsdóttir. Kristín Vala, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here with you. When Taru asked me to give a 10-minute presentation on transition, I thought, my goodness, this is a whole academic course. How do I do it in 10 minutes? So I will skate over some work that has been done in the field, but then I will talk about culture in the Nordic countries that happened in the late 19th century, because I think we can learn something from that. So transition theory comes from an American psychologist called Nancy Schlossberg, who focused on transitions in people's lives. For example, students going from rural communities to colleges in cities, or people going into retirement and how they would adapt to the new life, etc. And she looked very much about, what sort of situation people are in, what is the personal resilience or their self, what sort of support systems are around them, and what sorts of strategies are available. Now, much more recently, I published a book with my colleague Petra Kunkel on transformation literacy. That is, what sort of literacy do we have to have in order to be able to lead large-scale sustainability transitions? And we looked at things like what sort of mindsets do people need to have, what are the systems interactions, and what are the processes that you can engage with. And so I invite you to have a look at these references. There's a reference list at the back. But what I would really like to talk about in this short time is a book that sort of was an eye-opener for me when I read it in 2017, just after it came out. It's written by two people I know well, Lene Rakel Andersen, who is Danish, a philosopher, economist, and Thomas Björkman, who is a former banker who became, who saw the light and started figuring out what sort of inner transitions do people need to go through in order to care for not only themselves or their community, but also their country and the planet. And basically, they started looking at how come that the Nordic countries, which were amongst the poorest countries in the world, all of a sudden sort of took off in terms of economic activity. And they first looked at the World Value Survey by Christian Wetzel, who is a German political scientist who has looked at how people values are important. Do we just have survival values, or do we have self-expression values? You see on the x-axis, or what are the traditional values you see on the y-axis, and the secular rational values. And then he found out that in surveys that people cluster in different parts of the world, and the Nordic countries are up in the right-hand corner as part of the Protestant Europe countries. And Christian Wetzel has looked into how people's changed from just caring about sort of the in-group values, the whole nation, and then the whole cultural zone, and then care for humanity and the planet. And so if we want sustainability, we really need to care about the planet. And Lene Andersen and Thomas Björkman, they added into this, which they now call the 10 circle of belonging. They added a second family, because most people are married at least twice. The local community, if not the circle of friends that may be farther afield. And then the universal principles, which are the sort of important agreements that we make at UN level, like the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Goals. So what is then needed? If we look at the development psychologist Robert Kagan, he has looked into how people's mind and thinking changes with age. So you start as a child where you are self-discovering. Then when you're sort of 6 years to a teen, you become self-consolidating. And then the third order is when you become a teen to an adult and you become self-governing. But in that, if you get stuck there, then you have internalized norms. You look at conformity is important, group above principles, simple abstractions, and the person is held by the group's ideas and values. If you need to, in order to lift your views higher, you need to become self-authoring, and you have your own norms. You have ideas and values. The principles are above the group, and abstract thinking is important. I was going to change this presentation so I can actually read my slide. Let me find you again. Because I have the yeah, here we are. I have the photo of the screens of the people on top of the slide. In order to be have the sort of highest values where you actually care about the planet, then you have reached the capability of self-transforming. So you have a systems perspective, and you are capable of holistic thinking, and this is sort of the highest order of thinking that you can reach. Let me see. Am I sharing the slides?
Yeah, you
Yes,
can you
but
start,
now I
please,
cannot.
the presentation mode? Yes. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. So what is behind the Nordic secret then? They came to the conclusion that the enlightenment in Europe came to Denmark finally in the mid-1850s. And they started to have, and this was brought in by, for example, the philosopher Kierkegaard and the religious leader Grundtvig. And salons were set up in Copenhagen by women, just like they had been done in Zurich and Paris and Edinburgh and elsewhere in Europe. And out of these discussions, they started what they called folk high schools. There, young people came in. They already knew how to read and write, but they didn't come in to take any exams. What they came in to do was to discuss ideas. First, there were mostly men, but later on, it was half women. In these schools, they boarded with the teacher and helped with the chores. There were no examinations. They did a lot of cultural stuff, singing and reading, but the primary thing was to discuss ideas. And in that, there was sort of a spiritual awakening. They got self-confidence, and once they came out, they established cooperatives in their farming community. And these cooperatives also started folk schools. And in Denmark, they started, and by the end of the 19th century, there were 150 folk high schools across Denmark, Sweden, and Norway, and a few after the turn of the century in Finland. In going through these folk high schools where students were discussing ideas for maybe 3 to 6 months, they, in the analysis of Andersen and Björkman, they went from only thinking about themselves to thinking about themselves being proud of their country, and then they became self-authoring and layer 4. And they looked at this as first going through Folkbildung 1 and then Folkbildung 2, which happened during the 20th century, and now we need to go through Folkbildung 3. So what does Bildung mean? It is, of course, a German word. It's a combination of personal growth, social responsibility, and intellectual development. The schools played a transformative role in the agricultural development of the Nordic countries, and they emphasized the empowerment of rural population, fostering both personal and cultural development and practical skills that revolutionized farming practices. And so in conclusion, I would like to say it's important that that if you're interested in transition, to look at transition theory, also transformation literacy, as I've talked about before, and also practice where people have actually gone out and done transformations themselves. For example, Gabe Brown in the United States, who was a leader in the regenerative agriculture community and then is now going across the US and elsewhere to teach other farmers. The impact of these folk high schools in the 19th century, early 20th century were skill development. The cooperative movement came out of it, and there was democratization of knowledge and cultural empowerment. There was an integration of enlightenment ideals into rural education, provided a model for self-improvement and communal cooperation, which became the backbone of agricultural modernization in Denmark and beyond. And folk high schools facilitated a bridge between traditional farming methods and emerging scientific approaches, making Nordic agriculture a cornerstone of sustainable and cooperative practices globally. And Europe could now lead an agroecological transition by inviting people to 21st century type high schools that focus on inner development through Bildung and learn from the Nordic countries. I think, Thomas Björkman likes to think about these folk high schools now as sort of retreat centers where you go and you learn something new and discuss ideas. And he has his own retreat center on an island off Stockholm where he invites people to discuss ideas. So part of the training that comes out of your program could be the establishments of such schools in different corners of Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vala. Very interesting talk. We have time for one or two short questions. Does someone in the audience want to ask something right now? You can also write your question in the chat.
Okay, there isn't questions in the chat by now.
Okay. Anna, would you like to take your question?
Okay, Vala. I would like to ask you, in case we are interested in implementing courses, for instance, on ecological agriculture, delivered by the method of folk high schools, what advice could you give?
Well, I would advise you to talk to people who are involved in the folk high schools in the Nordic countries at the moment. And I know, for example, that Lene Andersen is on the board of a Swedish folk high school. So talking to the Nordic Bildung network that she runs in Copenhagen, I think would be a good start.
Okay, maybe you can write down in the chat, maybe the names.
Yes, and another good person is a Swedish person who is involved with another folk high school in Sweden. Now I can't remember her name, but I'll put it into the chat. And the folk high schools are known for setting up unusual courses. For example, one of them has set now up on a course on ecocide and what ecocide law would mean and making it criminal to destroy ecosystems.
Okay, thank you. And has this methodology been implemented in countries other than Nordic countries? I don't think so, but
there are some folk high school type schools in the US. And actually, I don't know whether you noticed that on the front cover of the book, The Nordic Secret, there was a photograph of a woman. She was the first Black American person to refuse to stand up on a bus in the 1950s. She was called Rosa in Pennsylvania.
Oh, Thank you.
So she had the courage to stand up for her own rights. And that's also, outlined in the book. And I very much recommend reading it. Maybe get the second edition, because there they have put in more about the Bildung process. In the first book, it was mostly on the sort of or very much focused on how how the enlightenment had an influence in the Nordic countries.
Thank you, Vala.
Thank you very much.
Now need to move further in the program. Vala will stay with us, so you can keep on thinking more questions for her, and we will have an open discussion a bit later on. Now we would like to move forward with our second speaker. I would like to introduce you to Dóra Drexler from the Hungarian Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, 𝐀𝐠𝐫𝐢𝐜𝐻. And Dóra, you're welcome. The floor is yours.
Hello, thank you very much, Taru, and good afternoon to all of you. I will try to share my screen and my presentation. Let's see. Can you see it in presentation mode? Thank you.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
I'll do you a kind of Bildung network, or hopefully something similar, which is an ambition at the European Commission level nowadays. And it's called Living Lab Network. So I will go into a bit our own example. The Hungarian Research Institute of Organic Agriculture established an on-farm living lab in Hungary, and will guide you through actually what this means. So just to give a bit of background who we are, 𝐀𝐠𝐫𝐢𝐜 is a public benefit non-profit private research institute in Hungary. We were founded in a collaborative project with the Swiss FIBEL, some of you might know, biggest organic research center in Europe, in 2011, with the aim of fostering scientific research of organic agriculture in Hungary with a lot of international connections. So in 2012, early on we launched this on-farm participatory research network, which I will talk to you about now. And we were accredited as a living lab by the European Network of Living Labs in 2020. So why fostering organic at all? You can consider, or I like to consider, organic agriculture as the forerunner of sustainable food systems. So if you want to see food production without, basically without chemical pesticides, mineral fertilizers, without GMOs, taking 4 basic principles in the front line, these are health, ecology, care, and fairness. The organic sector is built upon these values. So in Hungary, you can see that there has been a growth in the organic movement, in numbers of farmers and in area as well, but still we are in the backdrop of many in the ranking of European countries. So we thought when we started this on-farm network, we had, of course, already examples of our predecessors. For example, as I mentioned, FIBEL, who had already worked, this project, for example, was in Africa, where farmers, symbolized by these little houses, took up topics which they were interested in and started working together with the researchers and other actors of a value chain, testing things in their own real-life contexts. Of course, some considered real scientific trials were also set up in a research center, but they were actively taking part in the innovation and the research. And basically this concept of participatory on-farm research was taken up by us in Hungary as well in 2012. And we started doing this type of cycle, defining the practice-oriented questions together with the farmers. For example, which potato variety is best to grow in different regions of Hungary under organic conditions. We set up very simple experiments which fit into the farmers' everyday practices. So they tested different varieties, for example. We captured data together, some with scientific expertise, some which they did by themselves. We evaluated and discussed the results together. So all the farms saw all the results. And then we published more widely also the results, but started once again from beginning, defining if we are on a good track, if the experiment should be changed or not, how to go on. All this with the aim of reaching and sharing new results that are implemented in practice and are evidence-based. It was complemented by different other activities like field days, yearly summaries of the results in paper, technical leaflets, and a lot of actors being involved in the meanwhile. The first time we got acknowledged for this way of working was in 2017, because I have to admit that when we started in 2012, we were not considered by formal academia as doing real research. So in 2017 was the first time we received this award. It's a Hungarian award for agricultural innovation. And you can see, as it was mentioned, that since then, the EU even has taken up this way of working and placed it as a center, as coined as a term of living labs. So actually we didn't change what we did, but suddenly we became very interesting in terms of this method of research. This is just to show you a glimpse of the participating farms all over Hungary in different topics in a set of years. So I wanted to mention that beyond this cycle, which I just described, also a product development process sometimes accompanies such living lab themes. For example, ancient grains, emmer and einkorn, have become, since our research together with the farmers, products which they produce, or Landers tomato seedlings, which were found to be productive and resistant to different pest diseases, are now on the market, which were tested out in the on-farm living lab, or the seed mixture of inter-row crops is also a product which came out of this type of method. And these are just a glimpse of the different technical leaflets in Hungarian that were also something very practical in the end that could be disseminated further. So through this example, I think it's maybe more easy to understand the concept of living labs than only by this definition, because it's quite abstract. So, but if you want to formulate it, then living labs are user-centered open innovation ecosystems. They are based on a co-creation approach. And the main thing is that real-life communities and settings are the place of the innovation. So you involve different users, the ones who will actually benefit from the outcomes, public and private actors and knowledge institutions, experts in the field of science, for example, who all work to give solutions in a real-life context to common defined objectives. And a lot of EU projects we take part in. I just wanted to show you some of the logos, which for research institutions might be an incentive also to try to start this way of working. And to conclude, I wanted just to sum up why this is good for the individual farmer, he or she gains a sustainable new practices, first-hand experience with them, validates the new information on their own farm and context, and joins, and this is very important for personally for a lot of our farmers, joins a community, a network of professionals who are facing similar challenges, have similar values, can share experiences. This is something where they learn from each other also as a lot, not just from us, of course. For the researchers, these are our benefits. Real-life challenges are what we are up to solving. And I mentioned the projects, and the really day-to-day connection with the practice makes it, for us as researchers, a feeling of being really useful, not just working for the cupboard. And for society, if you like, it does increase competitiveness. It ensures or takes a step towards more sustainable food systems. And we see that it's more attractive, this way of working, to the young generation. And the implementation of the developed practices and solutions is much more efficient because the participants see with their own eyes, experience with their own hands, and they really believe it, contrary to sometimes when scientists just, explain things. But of course, there are challenges of working as a living lab. You need to have multiple competencies. So not only traditional research know-how, but communication, organization, and so on. Facilitation of workshops or discussions. We have to train our colleagues also internally to live up to the expectations of the living lab. So new colleagues, for example, joining in from outside, have to get all the knowledge and ability to enable to work like this. And it's quite a complex concept. So, for example, to be accepted in academia or even sometimes in policy making, this has advanced a lot in the recent years due to the European Commission's priorities. Communicating with actors, I also mentioned here, because it can be a bottleneck in case, farmers are more interested in their usual daily business of growing crops and selling them. So you have to keep up their interest as well and motivation. And last but not least, I wanted to mention that we are quite lucky to be the coordinators of the European network of living labs and research infrastructures within the EU Agroecology Partnership. So, and beyond that, we also take part in the soil with double L, like Living Lab project in frame of the soil mission, where it allows us to share these experiences from the last 12 years and help colleagues and groups all over Europe who want to embark this line of way of working to build capacity and help with setting up the 100 soil living labs in Europe and the Agroecology Living Lab network in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dora. Really, really nice to see a practical example and how this network has been created over the last years. Before we open up the questions for both speakers, is there one question for Dora to start with? Erika, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Hi, Dora. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm very curious about this thing that you mentioned a lot about, and that was not really taken serious in the science community. So I would like to know, like, how do you cope with the situation internally between the researchers, externally also with other actors, and what are the main changes that you observed during these years working with these living labs, internally in research and also outside of the research partners or actors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, when we started back in 2012, the academic view was that, every site you have to have at least 4 repetitions, 3 or 4 repetitions, a randomized block design if you want to do a normal agronomy trial, or and that you have to have all the data from your soil, your meteorological data, everything. And as we worked with farmers, we started to work with farmers. That's just not possible. So a farmer does not have the equipment for small plot trials, cannot do randomization. It's very simple strip trials which we can do, for example, in testing varieties. And this was, always considered as not up to the methodological expectations. But since then also, it was visible through our publications as well that we can compensate this by having a lot of sites, not just one site, a lot of years, and statistical methods that allow still a scientific publication and analysis of these data. And on the other hand, it was also recognized that the impact of the real life conditions results are much bigger than if you are working only on a research station. So I think the world also has changed a bit. The expectations have changed a bit, and the climate crisis which we experience in Hungary quite severely just opened eyes that we cannot get stuck in let's say research facility grounds. We have to enlarge to real life environments and provide practicable solutions together with the stakeholders in order to make a change. And I think that's now more and more recognized inside and also outside academia. So I would say that the expectations of the society have changed the point of view within academia as well.
Thank you, Dora.
We have 2 more questions in the chat for Dora.
Yes. So we can now kick off the discussion. And when you are thinking of your questions, please remember you can ask both of the speakers. Once you are ready with your questions, you can either write it in the chat or you will raise your hand. Anna will pick you up from there. And maybe, Anna, you can start with the questions from the chat to begin with.
So first of all, I would like to thank Vala for all this information she shared with us. So thank you very much. So the question is, which grain varieties are focused in the living lab trials?
Yes, so we have, for example, common winter wheat trials, but also we have ancient wheats like Triticum monococcum, Triticum dicoccum. These are emmer and einkorn, durum wheat, and we launched also some experiments now with Triticale and winter barley, I think. Yeah, so we are extending the crops which we focus on as we are able to grow also as an organization. And the varieties within the species, like the grain varieties, like it's from local breeding sources also, but from the neighboring countries as well, mainly from Austria, which is close to Hungary, where we can have different varieties. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you. We have another question. We have someone raised his hand, but we have another question before that in the chat. The question is, I was wondering how agri-competitiveness is defined and measured to compare with other intensive practices.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Thank you. So in fact, to tell you actual figures, I need to ask for a bit of time because our economic survey is on its way. So another another branch of our Living Lab activities is to build up a participatory network of organic farms who are willing to contribute economic data of their farm. And this way we want to build a representative cost-benefit analysis to see how it shows up in comparison to the already existing overall farm economy networks results, which is done since a long time. But for organic, this is not yet available. What we see till now, just to tell you some preliminary results, that in the conventional, let's say, representation of farms in the country, economic test network, it's called, there are also partly or fully organic farms. And if you just pick them out and analyze them, they come out better economically. So they earn more money in the end, have less costs, which is not yet a representative result, but it indicates something. So this is what we are trying to build a fuller picture with a representative sample to be sure. And I see Stefano.
Thanks.
Yes, many thanks, Anna, and many thanks, Dora, for your presentation. This question is for you. You mentioned that you have observed an impact on the involvement in agriculture of young generations through your experience and through your activities. Do you have also results or, let's say, insights regarding the gender equity or the condition of women in agriculture in your experience, in your living lab, in your activities along time?
Mm-hmm. Thanks. We have definitely more male farmers, male contributors. I didn't analyze it a number, but it's I would say it's significantly more male farmers. That's traditionally, I guess, what you can expect. But there are female representatives as well, mainly in the horticultural sector. In arable cropping, it's still quite rare, let's say. But we are also conducting a more thorough research, what I mentioned regarding the economics. We will also have figures for the whole country in about 2-3 months from now.
So, Thorsten, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a question for Kristín Vala. I think it's really refreshing that we bring on this the transformative approach, sort of bring it beyond the sort of transformation of agriculture, and actually that you bring on the personal, the psychosocial aspects of that into it also, and also the cooperative aspects. However, wouldn't it, before we sort of say that the Nordic folk high school Bildung approach would be applicable or sort of to be rolled out, couldn't it also be argued that that approach had its time in a sort of historical specific and geographical cultural context of social liberalism, you know, and there may be other emancipatory Bildung approaches that might be more appropriate to other parts of the world, like, for instance, Paulo Freire's approach to emancipation. And we could probably also think of other approaches that could actually help populations uplift themselves and actually take them to levels where they actually become, well, people who where they actually play active roles in transitions.
Yes, thanks for that question. That's really good. Actually, what I find, all different approaches are of course something that can be considered. But what I find fascinating about this transition, which was a cultural transition, an economic transition that occurred in the Nordic countries in affiliation with these folk high schools, was that people are not coming to school to learn how to do something. The ideas, and therefore I would think discussed as well. And then people would evolve their own ideas, because telling people what to do, that agroecology is the only way forward, I think will not work. But to get people to get the idea, yes, they want to go home and change their farms to be agroecological or regenerative or organic or whatever, works much better. And therefore, every such school could be different and have different emphasis, and definitely bring in other socio-ecological transformations that have occurred in the world, and I'm definitely not an expert in those.
There is another question for
Does
you.
that answer your question? There's another question for me?
Yes, there is another question for you. How do you think we could use the approaches taken at the Folk High School Institute to help bring diverse actors closer together to support sustainable food systems transformation? I think one of the main barriers is power structures and diverse perspectives that do not dialogue with each other and fail to transparently express their values and concerns. And maybe these approaches could help us dealing with this big barrier. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, so, I was involved as a member of the Club of Rome to prepare for the big food summit that happened in New York at the UN, I think 2021. And I remember leading a show to two people from the Bill Gates Foundation. And I said, wow, the Bill Gates Foundation has lots of people to come and take part in these discussions. Or maybe there were even three, but I thought I would have one. There are big powers that just want genetically modified food and high technology, etc., to be the future because they want to make money on it. I think what we need and what happened in the Nordic countries was a grassroots transformation. And the grassroots can be powerful in leading transitions on farms. And that way you could you could fight these big agribusiness interests that do not like any environmentally uncostly methods that can be brought into the discussion.
Okay. We have another question. Hi all, I'm Martin. I would like to know if you have any collaboration initiatives with the CIRA projects on agroecology. Agroecology is implementing an action research program on agroecology. 13 action research projects across the global fact sheet can be found. Well, we have a link here. We would be interesting to share with you our experience in one of your sessions. Okay, this is a comment. I'm coordinating this initiative. Okay, this is a comment. Thank you for the comment. Is there any more questions?
If there are no more questions, maybe Martin wanted to share something in words as well, or?
Yes, sure. So I am Martin Agbotin. As I have written in the comment in the chat. We are implementing an action research program on agroecology across the globe. We have in total 13 action research projects, 8 in Africa, and we have others in Asia and Latin America, and also the Pacific. These project initiatives are on agroecology, and we will be interested to share with you our experience in one of your sessions.
Oh, thank you very much for that comment. I will take the link from the chat, and we will see how we could fit it into the program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks. Anna, did we still have some questions on your list? Maybe some final questions to both of the speakers?
There is no questions, but just I was a participant is asking if presentations and contact lists of the speakers will be shared.
So
Yes.
the recording will be shared. So on the webpage of the Agroecology Partnership, there is an home page for the conversations. And once the recording is available, we will also put it over there. It will be there with a short summary. We can also put the link on the chat. Great. Then I would really like to thank you all for your active participation. I would especially like to thank our speakers, Kristín, Vala, and Dora, for their wonderful presentations. Thank you very much for being with us today and sharing your experiences. It was very, very interesting to hear from both of you. For the whole task group from Agroecology, thank you very much for the organizing of the conversation. We will have a next conversation just before Christmas holidays. So on the 11th of December, we will have a conversation where the focus will be on the network of living labs and research infrastructures from the partnership. So you will hear from �K𝐬𝐿 about how to apply into this network, and you will get a German example of an existing living lab from the network. In December, we will start at 1 o'clock on our regular time, so please make a note of that. If you are not yet on the email list, or you have a colleague who is not yet on the email list but would like to, please send an email to me and I will add you to the list. And if there are no more questions, thank you very much. We wish you a very nice afternoon, and I'm looking forward to see you again in December. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.